This month of the How's All That Workin' For You podcast is sponsored by J. Brooks Coffee Roasters in Memphis, Tennessee. Urban Joe is the house favorite at J. Brooks for cold brew coffee. The legendary flavor of Urban Joe will ignite your taste buds with captivating shades of cocoa and cream. With a pleasantly balanced, bold body, the dark roast lover will fall head over heels for this roast. Cold brew is very quick and simple to make. It contains 2/3 less acid than hot brew coffee, so it's a perfect choice for anyone who has reflux or needs a stomach-friendly option for coffee. And if you make cold brew at home, you can make both cold and hot coffee with your solution. Everyone loves an adventure story. Make your day an epic adventure with a steaming cup or cold brew of Urban Joe. To order this signature blend for yourself and learn more about J. Brooks Coffee, click the link in the show notes or visit jbrookscoffeeroasters.com. That's the letter J, brookscoffeeroasters.com. Welcome to episode 44. You are listening to the podcast where we ask, how's all that working for you? It's a bold question that sparks transformation. And in this space, we are done with sugarcoating and we embrace authenticity. I'm your host, Rachel D. Baker, guiding you on this journey to create some breathing room, set healthy boundaries, and reclaim your time guilt-free. This is real talk with a bit of sass, and we are always seeking the truth in God's word. And today is going to be a treat. I'm excited to sit down and talk with my friend Danielle Damrell. And if you don't know her yet, get ready because she's a friggin' rock star. Danielle is a life story coach with extensive experience in speaking, writing, and a variety of creative business services. Breaking into the entrepreneurship world as a lettering artist, which is so cool, by the way. Her art and skill set evolved, and she's now been featured in publications all over the world. That's including Business Insider, Forbes, Voyage Denver, several other national publications. And in 2021, her passion for creativity and connection merged as she launched the Created Worthy podcast. I had the honor to be interviewed and be on that podcast not too long ago. We'll link that in the show notes. It was just a fun conversation, so I want to make sure you don't miss that one. But you need to know, in 2017, Danielle founded the Danielle Damrell Creative Collective. Her collective is aimed at serving women of all kinds through monthly creative processing workshops and creative services that help business owners become seen and heard and valued by utilizing the most powerful tool in the world, their life stories. She's got so much going to help you to live a life of freedom and abundance that we are all worthy of living. That's what we want to jump into today, is this knowing your worth, owning your worth, and how you were actually created worthy. Danielle, hello, my friend.
Hello. I am so honored to be here. This has been a long time in the making.
It has. Listen, we've gone back and forth with family emergencies and illnesses. And I know even right now, you're still battling. You're not like top of your game health-wise.
Yeah, I might have caught a little something from a family vacation recently, but totally worth it. It's all going to be fine.
It's great. We said it's fine. I'm fine. This is fine.
Yeah, I sound like a frog, but it's fine.
You sound fantastic. And I'm right there with you. I'm like right on the edge. It's like, is she sick? Is she not? We don't know, but we're going to make it. And we made it happen. And I know this is going to bless so many. So we'll start with the question I always open with. And I want to know, what does breathing room look or feel like for you?
Oh my goodness. I read this question and I was like, Lord, help me answer this. And he was so good and so faithful. He just said, he reminded me that it looks like living out the fruits of the Spirit and experiencing them in day-to-day life, not just like knowing about the fruits of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, gentleness, faithfulness, and self-control, but really being able to live them out and experience them in how we feel, right? So for me, that's what breathing room looks like, is when I'm able to experience peace, when I'm able to experience goodness, when I'm able to experience self-control.
That's so good. And I love a recent conversation with Season Bowers. We talked about how the Holy Spirit is often referenced in the Bible. It's this fluid moving. It's the wind. It's not a solid for, God is the rock, Jesus is the cornerstone, but the Spirit is this fluid. And so I love that association with the Spirit and breathing room. Oh, I have all the images going. Thank you for that. You've got so much insight to share with us as far as how to express our creativity, how to live as we are creative worthy. But as we dive into discussing that, the first thing I really would love if you could just share a little bit of your story, your background. It's a lot. And so we'll, highlight.
Yeah, high level
overview. But I know it would bless our listeners so much if you could just share a little bit of your story first.
Yeah, for sure. So I grew up in a broken household. And by broken, I mean like a lot of brokenness. Yes, my parents were never married, so broken, I guess, in that way as well. But I moved all the time. There was every type of abuse that you can think of has played a part in my story in one way or another. And when I got into middle school, I actually developed an eating disorder. And so that led to a bunch of different just health issues. I was sick all the time. And I got expelled for the first time from the Archdiocese of Denver in 7th grade. I was expelled from a Christian school for the second time in my freshman year of high school. And I was expelled from that same Christian school that let me come back after I went and did some therapy and things for a third time while in the peak of my eating disorder. And so after that expulsion, went to 2 more schools and was really just ready to die. Like truly, I didn't care if I died. I was in a really abusive household, physical at that point, and there was just so much fighting and chaos. And I was like, what is the purpose of my life? Like, why? Why am I just the problem all the time? There's no purpose of my life. I am not worthy of living. And I'm ugly because I'm fat. And I am blah, 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 blah. Just every like negative thought that you could think of. And at this point, I was 15. So peak teenage years.
Oh, I've got one that's 15 now. Help us, Jesus. It's hard.
It is hard. And it's just a really, like in general, it's a difficult age. But for me, I was like, I don't feel like I have a home. I don't feel like I have any parents. I don't feel like I have anybody who cares about me except for my teachers. And I just got expelled from my school, my safe haven, for the third time. Like I kept getting expelled from schools, even though school was the only place I felt safe. And so all of that to say, nothing felt okay. And at this point, I was actually being prescribed narcotics by my doctor just to keep me alive. She's like, if we can just numb your pain, then like at least you're still alive. But obviously that was not healthy, especially when I was bulimic. And so at the end of my sophomore year, I had applied for this place called Mercy Ministries. It's now called Mercy Multiplied. It's in Nashville, Tennessee. And it's a Christian treatment facility, a residential treatment facility. But you have to choose to go there. That's the thing that makes it different. You can't be sent there. And I was like, well, I don't have anywhere to go. So like, yeah, I'll apply to go to this random place in this random state I've never been to.
I was going to say, right, because you weren't from Tennessee, right?
No, I'm from Colorado.
Gotcha.
And so, well, I was born in Idaho and moved to Utah. And then at this point in my life, I was in Colorado, and I actually am still here today. But I'd never been to Tennessee, never been anywhere on the east side of the country at all. And so right before I left, I had an exploratory surgery because I was so sick. My immune system was so bad. They knew I had an eating disorder, but I didn't care and I wasn't going to stop. And so they did this exploratory surgery, and I can't ever remember what it's called, but they did an anoscopy, colonoscopy at 15, which like normally you don't get those procedures that age. And then they attached like a camera to my esophagus and they tracked how much I was throwing up. And I went in to get the results of that surgery, and my doctor was like, Danielle, if you weren't going to a treatment facility, I would send you to Children's Hospital right now because you are dying. Like you are going to die. You have weeks away from killing yourself. And I was like, oh, well,
Mm-hmm.
but I also was like, but I am going somewhere, so you don't have to send me to the hospital.
Showed you.
Yeah, exactly. So I believe it was like 9 days later, I packed up, I flew across the country by myself, was picked up by strangers at the airport. I walked into that treatment facility and I never threw up again. I was bulimic. And that was just so God, right? And so even at that treatment facility, I came to encounter God in a much more tangible way. Like I had been, my family, my immediate family, nobody is Christian. I'm the only Christian even to this day. But I was bullied in public schools, so I always like wanted to be in private schools. And so I had more exposure to God, one in the Catholic form, and then when I switched to Christian school, it was more of like, is this like a cult or like, why are you guys praying directly to God? But I was exposed to God as a relational God. And so when I went to Mercy and they were more charismatic and they were spirit-filled situations, I was like, oh my gosh, this is God. Like I can feel him. Like he really is for me. And so that's really where I would say that's where my relationship with the Lord started. But don't get me wrong, like although things were great and God was present, I was still a broken 15-year-old girl who'd just come out of years and years of chaos. And so I was there for 7 months and I actually got kicked out. And that was like the biggest, hardest loss up until that point in my life. And I got kicked out because of bullying, because I was a bully. And very honestly, I was a bully. And that's how I like expressed my frustration for my life, was just by like being like, I'm a jokester, I'm a clown. But I would do it at the expense of other people, which was so hurtful. And I just, it was just something that like I'm definitely not proud of, but I see the reasons now after so many years of therapy, like why it happened that way.
Yeah. And that's such a big thing, I think, to be able to look back and see those things and own them for what they are.
Yeah.
And move forward from that and see God working through it as you go. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah. So it's definitely something that I just continue to pray about. And I pray over the people that I have hurt previously, because I'm like, God, like, I don't know what my words or actions towards them caused in them. So please break any chains that may have come from the ways that I treated them.
Absolutely.
But we got to that in the healing process. So after being kicked out, I actually went and lived with a host family, was there for 10 months, got to go back to Mercy, graduated, then got kicked out of that family, which was by far, still to this day, I would say the biggest, most painful loss, because all I had ever wanted in my life was family. And then I had one and then I lost it. Yeah. And so it was that whole thing was really hard, but I was able to finish high school, graduated, and God, this like miracle after miracle, now looking back, he gave me a vision when I was 17 that I would be using my story to help point other people towards freedom. And I had like a 1 point something GPA in high school because I was barely ever there. I was sick. I would ditch. I was just like sporadic. And somehow he opened the doors for me to go to Colorado Christian University, which is a Christian university here in Denver, in case you missed it in the name, in Colorado.
The Colorado?
Yeah. And I was able to go to that school and really focus my education on communication and public speaking. And God just opened the door for that. And it was amazing. Like I thrived in an educational setting, learning the things I actually wanted to learn about.
Right.
Who would have thought? And side note, I was diagnosed with ADHD when I was at Mercy. So like at this point, I knew I had ADHD.
Yeah.
And so my sophomore year of college, I got into my first real relationship and I had my daughter. I got pregnant with my daughter. So I was 19 and I was actually broken up from my ex-boyfriend at the time. He was several years older than me and it was just a really toxic situation. But I felt like God was so present. And all of a sudden I went from, again, just battling those feelings of like, I am unworthy. There's nothing for me to live for. It doesn't matter how much accomplishments I have because I'm just going to always self-sabotage. That's really the lies that the enemy held me down by, were like,
Yeah.
this is your pattern. You are going to fail. You've lost everything that's important to you. You've been expelled from every school with every person that's ever cared about you. Everyone's given up. So like, you're a failure and you're destined to be a failure.
And doesn't he get in our head like that? Doesn't he get like, even when we have heard truths and we know those things, like you are created in God's image, you are worthy, you are loved. He still gets in there. And those pieces of us that are broken and that we do hurt from, he just,
He's just such a weasel.
we hate him. We hate him.
We hate him.
Yeah.
We hate you, enemy. Hear it in Jesus' name.
In the name of Jesus. Okay, go ahead. Anyway.
So I was pregnant with this baby. And I was like, one, I grew up in a household, like my siblings are 14, 16, and 26 years older than me. I didn't grow up around kids. I grew up around all adults. I don't know anything about kids. I don't know anything about babies. And now I'm having one and I still feel like a baby. And so I just had such a hard pregnancy, but all knowing that God was doing something very, like he was changing my life. Like there was a purpose for this baby and he had called me to be her mother. And I had explored all alternative methods. I had explored adoption, abortion, everything. I did all of the unplanned pregnancy things that you could do and met with the people. And it was just really clear that God was like, this is your daughter. I have blessed you with a baby and you will know why soon. I was terrified, but all of a sudden I had someone else to live for. And so it wasn't about me. And that was like such a huge relief. It wasn't a hard process for me at all. And I think that in itself was a miracle. It wasn't a hard process for me to be like, oh, okay, now I'm not going to like be caught in the lie that I'm not enough. And so I'm going to ruin everything because it's not about me anymore. It's about stewarding this life. And even at 19, like I very clearly understood that now my priority had to be like changing and breaking the patterns not for me, but for her. And so I had her. First couple of years were really hard. I was on and off with her dad. It was a horrible, horrible, horrible first couple of years, just to be honest. And then I met my husband, my now husband. He and I were working together, and that he was I would say my biggest miracle, because Ella is also my biggest miracle. So I've got a couple of biggest miracles.
Yeah.
But my husband is like the biggest, because the life that we have now is because God brought him into it and showed me protection and showed me stability. And he doesn't have a whole lot of baggage and trauma. And so he was just able to kind of learn and hold space for what I was, which felt like a bag of trauma.
Yeah. Yeah. Understandably, there was so much.
And he chose Ella and was very outward about that. So all of this to say, long story long, I met my husband 5 years ago, 5.5, almost 6 years ago. We got married. And since then, I've started a business. Well, I started a business right before we got married, and I finished my degree. So we got married the same year that I finished my degree, and I started my business the year prior. So it was a crazy year. But since then, it's really been a shift and a focus on healing. And so my daughter has gotten every kind of therapy that you can think of. I've gone through so many years of intensive trauma therapy, which I had done prior, but like this time I was in a safe environment and like had stability. So it was different. And that's just where God just started revealing his plan and purpose for my life and the message that he has for me to share with the world, which roots in creativity.
Yes. And that I do want to speak into that today. And it does sound and feel like so much. And I know you've shared that story before, and I am so grateful for your willingness to be vulnerable and share all those things, because those are hard things. And a lot of people don't want to share and talk about those things. And so, one, I just appreciate that in you, your willingness to share your testimony and how God has worked through your life. I think that's huge, and we need more of that. But also, as we talk about how every woman was created worthy of all the things God wants to give us, I think it's important that we're sitting here having this conversation with, both of us have been through all the things and we've talked about our hard stories and we've done the trauma therapy and all these things. And so to say, we're not just sitting here like, you are worthy, friend.
Big W. Yeah.
Because the Bible says, not that that's not truth, but when you're in the valley of the shadow of all the things and can't find that for yourself, I think it's important to hear from those who have also been in the valley of the shadow of all the things that we are, and you are, and there are ways to access that and express that. And you're so good at that. So we're going to dive in.
Yes.
We've talked a lot about owning our worth, living in our purpose. That's a constant conversation here. But I would love to offer a few tools for women who struggle with knowing how to get from where they are to where they want to be. So what can you tell us just a little more about creative processing, how that can help us with these things?
So yeah, creative processing it's my thing. And it's my thing because God said, this is your thing, not because I was like, this is my thing. Okay.
Right.
So I just have to get that clear. And that was actually, it ties back to part of my story after doing many years of trauma therapy. This was something that God really revealed to me and showed me was a processing modality for me to continue to process through both the past, present, and the future so that I can fully experience his gifts. So creative processing is definitely my number one tool and recommendation. And let me tell you why. So let's go back. Creative processing is simply activating your creative mind to process any certain intention. It's literally just harnessing the power of your innate creativity as a healing modality in itself. So using your creativity, your unique creativity as a healing modality in and of itself. The key to it is intention. And slowing down your mind enough to set an intention, especially for those of us with ADHD, is the hardest part.
I hear that.
Yes. But after we practice it, it becomes more like muscle memory, which is the key, the goal. And then suddenly you can use it to process anything, literally any and everything. So the prompt that I recommend using for creative processing is the purpose of enter your creative method is to enter any certain intention. So an example of this could be the purpose of journaling is to process my overwhelm in this present moment. And that might just be like a brain dump. Like you just are writing nonsense words in no particular order that make no sense to anyone but you. And that's okay. That's good.
We love a good brain dump here. That's one of my top strategies when you are feeling overwhelmed. So you are right on track with what we talk about here. I love that.
Yes. And really what you probably are recognizing is that this is something you already do, right? But when you can frame it as like, okay, I'm going to practice creative processing. It's just putting words to what you have to give you that freedom. And then you're bringing in that intention of like, I want peace. I want to experience peace. And so that's where the Lord is like, yeah. And it's right here in front of you. So like tap into it.
Yeah. So good.
Another example, though, could be like the purpose of cleaning is to process gratitude for my home. And so one thing I really want to make clear is that we need to make sure that we're not limiting creativity to just creating tangible artwork because it's so much more expansive than that. Every single one of us is created by a creator, which means that we have innate creativity. We have creative minds. That could look like, for some people, it looks like creating spreadsheets or reorganizing or painting, or sometimes it's just going on a walk or putting your feet in the sand. It doesn't matter. It doesn't need to look like you're drawing something or creating some outward expression. Creative processing is not about creating something on the outside. It's about creating a change on the inside. And so that's the difference between the creative process, which leads to an external result, and creative processing, which leads to an internal result. That's just a big part of it, is just make sure that you're not limiting creativity to
like arts and crafts. Yeah, I love that distinction because we do it when we think about being creative. My mind automatically goes to the arts and crafts world. And I've never considered myself a creative person. I have a mom who was a professional calligrapher for most of my life. And I have a sister who's very talented with painting and drawing. And she's, that it's like that skipped over me. I don't feel like I'm very artsy, but I have discovered over the years, and as I talk with people like you who talk about different ways of doing creative processing, I have a little bit of creativity, I guess, with words. I express myself through words. I'm not mad at a good spreadsheet. I love that you mentioned that, so as we do look at our own God-given strengths and skills and passions, I love that there are so many different ways that we can do this processing that doesn't have to look like art or a craft project. That's so good. Hey, it's Rachel, your go-to encourager and coach. I know you love our podcast talks, but imagine taking that connection to the next level in person. I'm more than a clarity coach. I'm someone who's been in the trenches, juggling all the things. I get it. I've danced with chaos, overloaded schedules, and the struggle to prioritize self-care. But I found the rhythm, and I've got the strategies to help your ladies create some breathing room. So if you're organizing an event, whether it's a conference, church gathering, or retreat, and you want a speaker who brings humor, real talk, and a dose of inspiration, I'm your girl. Let's chat about making your event a memorable one. Visit racheldbaker.com/speaking. That's racheldbaker.com/speaking. I can't wait to connect. Okay, I know people hearing this, the women are going to say, that's great and all. But, knowing is half the battle. We were raised on this. What are some of the most common mental or emotional blocks that you've seen that keep women from actually engaging in this creative processing?
I'm so glad you asked this because I was processing this yesterday. And this is something, so what I'm actually doing is taking my creative processing workshops and we're breaking them down and we're putting them into courses so that people can access them at any and every time.
Hang on, just hang on. Did everybody hear that? Girlfriend's about to bust out with some courses. I am so excited for that.
Yes. And we're going to be processing things like play and uncertainty and faith and hope and relationships, like common blocks that we experience, or things that we feel like stuck in. And they get stuck in our body. And so it's like, okay, well, how do I actually process this? So those are coming. But I want to say, just like as a general basis, I think it comes down to a couple of different things. And I think I'm going to ruffle some feathers here. So
let's go.
Yeah, I know that's what your show is all about. So here we are. So the first thing is lack of effective time management. And the second thing is a lack of true desire for change. So I have to be honest, both of these things are personal struggles of my own.
Same.
I've struggled with it. I still struggle with it. So I'm not saying this as like condemning, more of like, look, I'm preaching to the choir here. Yes. So the truth is, we make time for the things that we want to make time for. You may be saying to me, no, Danielle, you don't get it. I'm so busy. I have 100 kids and 300 different sports, and I'm a caretaker to my grandparents' uncle. and. But hear me out. I get it. I am not denying that you are busy, but I am denying that you are too busy to experience joy and peace or whatever else you're wishing you had more of. What this comes down to is effective time management. And fixing that leads to the other problem that hold most women back, this is kind of a circle.
Yeah.
Which is a lack of true desire for change. I get it. Change can be hard and it's typically most definitely uncomfortable, but this is what we're called into when we choose Jesus. We choose Jesus for the forgiveness and the love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control that he offers, right? That's why we are like, yeah, that's the one. He's the one for me. Yeah, sign me up. So if that's the truth behind our desire for Jesus, then we have to choose to make time to experience those things. And if we don't, we experience burnout, overwhelm, and we feel the pain of our past and the fear and anxiety of our future. And that's what our world has to offer, is a lot of pain and a lot of confusion and a lot of like, wait, what's the right thing, God?
Yes.
And if we don't choose to slow down, then we're never going to actually experience those things that we've invested in when we said yes to Jesus. So what I believe is that creative processing is a gateway to experiencing the desires of our hearts.
Ooh, hold up. I'm going to need you to say that one more time.
Yeah.
One more time, because y'all going to write that down.
Yes, write this down. Grab your pen. Grab your notes pad on your phone.
That's right.
Creative processing is a gateway to experiencing the desires of our hearts. It's a way to tap into our unique creative gifting, whatever that looks like, with intention, and therefore leads to the fulfillment of the things that we feel like we're lacking. So just to go back, effective time management is a choice. I know you're busy, friend. I am too. Rachel is too.
For sure.
But sometimes we got to choose to do the thing that's uncomfortable, which is like, could look like getting up way earlier than you want to. Or it could look like staying up even though you're exhausted. Or it could look like you going into the bathroom and turning on a passage from the Bible on your phone. It's okay. Whatever it is, you can engage in create. Maybe it's writing your thoughts down on your notepad when you're waiting in the pickup line to pick up your kid from school. You create time for the things that are important to you. And so if you feel like you're lacking experiencing the fruits of the Spirit, then you have to choose to make the time to experience them. And creative processing, framing it as creative processing, is simply a tool to help you to do that in a short amount of time. It doesn't take long to say the purpose of writing a few words down on my phone is to process peace. I need peace right now, God. Those are the two big blocks.
I love it. You're preaching my sermons over here. We are constantly talking about how to deal with the overwhelm, the burnout, the running on the hamster wheel, and creating that breathing room in our lives. And, we renamed this podcast, How's All That Working For You? For the very reason that when I do talk with coaching clients, or when I'm, any woman who like, I have this and I have that, all the things you were just talking about. And I have 5,000 children and I have all these things I have to go to. It's so exaggerated, but that's how we feel. It feels like too much. And so when I just sit and I listen and I take it all in, and we get to that point, and my next question is, and how's all that working for you? Because it's not. When we get honest about it, it's not working. I don't love it. I don't know even what I'm doing with my life. And so to pause, like you've said, choose that I don't want this to be how it continues. I don't want this to be the way my life goes from now, that my one and only life on this earth from now until the end. And to take that time and decide with intention how we spend it. I think part of this feeling worthy struggle is not everybody feels they are worthy of getting to choose that for themselves, to say, I can intentionally choose how to spend my time. But it's not just me yelling at you anymore. It's Danielle too. So there.
Right? Stop disqualifying yourself, friend.
Yeah.
Stop disqualifying yourself, because that's the enemy's got you where he wants you. When you do that, when you say, I don't have the choice, what? I'm sorry, what?
Yes.
And trust me, I've been there. I did not feel like I had the choice to make any good decisions, because every decision I made led to more pain and more destruction. I was wrong.
Yeah.
I was wrong. And Jesus was there all along. And even in the midst of me being wrong day in and day out, he was right. And he led me and he held me. And I'm here today because he was present and he was protecting me. Then he shepherded me back to him, and took years and years and years and years and lots of pain and lots of trauma, even more bad decisions and more losses. But he hasn't wasted a single one of those. because now all of those things are leading back to what I hope is pointing people towards freedom.
Yeah. So good. So good. Okay. We're just sitting here preaching. We're all up on our soapboxes preaching, but I love it. We're going to wind it down. Ooh, I'm like hitting my microphone. We're going to wind it down because I like to share tools and strategies that I know of that are helpful with time management and things. But I would love to hear, what are things that you have found most helpful to manage time and to allow for some breathing room in your life?
So I'm super stubborn. And I've tried so many different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the best thing truly that has worked for me has been to sign up for a class, this was so uncomfortable, you guys. I hated the thought of this. To sign up for a class at 5 a.m. at my gym. But I did this so that I would have accountability to wake up early, because if I miss the class, I get charged. And I'm a deal hunter. I do not want to waste money. I cannot do that. And so I was like, okay, I got to go. Even though I am not a morning person, I was like, I got to do it.
Yeah.
I got to put my shoes on, my big girl panties, and I got to go.
So good.
But for a little over a year now, I go 2 to 3 times a week. I don't go every day. I didn't set an unrealistic expectation to go every single day.
Mm-hmm.
I knew I wouldn't do that. I knew I'd fail. But I'll go 2 to 3 times a week, and I'll start off my day with moving my body. And then I get rewarded because I get to practice creative processing through meditating. Right now, I'm going through on the YouVersion Bible. You can do the Bible in a year. And I'm an Audible learner. And so I'll do my Bible reading while sitting in a massage chair or in the sauna after I've done my workout at 5 a.m. I know that I'm not like missing out on mom time because my kid's not up, my husband's not up, and I'm just like doing me, and God and I are just starting the day off together. And so what I've noticed is that I have not only a more positive outlook on my life when I do this, but I am also just so much more productive. I get my daughter to school on time, which honestly has been a real issue for me.
It's a big deal. Let's be real about it. That's a hard thing to do.
Yes, I'm a chronically late person, and that's been a real struggle. But when I do 5 a.m. workouts, I am on time, and I'm actually early sometimes. So thank you, Jesus. And then most importantly, I'm able to self-regulate so much more when I work out. So that's one thing. And then another thing I do is I accept structure instead of resisting it, which has been a huge game changer. And honestly, it was a process in and of itself, like a process that started in therapy. Thank you, God, for virtual therapy during COVID, because she could see the piles behind me and was like, Danielle, let's go through those piles. Now, I don't know how to do that. Nothing else at home. She's like, well, we're going to figure it out. And so we started there. And so now I've learned that I actually function off of structure, and I plan a lot. And so when I don't do these things, I realize that my anxiety is way higher. My overwhelm just is constant. Like I said, I wasn't always like that. So in 2020, I started working on that process of just being able to accept structure really intently. And miraculously, I really believe that I was able to rebuild those neural pathways that helped me to operate in alignment with the organizational gifting that God has given me.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that it was a gifting until I healed that, because that was just something that in childhood, a lot of times, when you tell your kid to go pick up their room and then you hold to that boundary, you're actually helping them to develop that neural pathway that will help them for the rest of their life. Well, I didn't have parenting like that. And so there were a lot of neural pathways that I just didn't develop because my development looked chaotic. And so that was a huge part of what I had to do in therapy. So with that, what structure looks like in tangible action.
Yeah, let's go.
I do 2 core things every single week to help me to create the breathing room in my life. The first thing is weekly planning in my paper planner. It took me 5 years to find the right paper planner for me, but I did. It's called My Goals. It's from a company in Australia, but very good planners, incredible. They're the leather bound, which that in itself just made me happy.
Yeah.
They have great pens.
I love it. When you find the resources, the tools that make you happy and work best for you, it makes all the difference. I love that.
It really does. And yes, I still have my digital calendar and I'm on Calendly. And like Rachel, like we have people schedule and we're in control of our calendars, but we also have people schedule on what works best for them. So instead of just relying on my calendar to manage my days, doing a paper calendar has really allowed me to manage my own calendar. And like I said, I'm super ADHD. So embarrassingly, I often double book myself. And so sitting down on Sundays and just reviewing my calendar each week helps me to, one, plan and communicate effectively, and two, just feel prepared for the week.
Yeah.
So that I don't leave a trail of annoyed people in my path. Like, I could be like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I double booked, but I've given them 4 days notice, right? So it's not like right at the time it's happening. And then the second thing I do, this is the biggest thing. So if you hear nothing else this whole time, this is what I want you to hear. Each and every single day, I surrender my plan to God's will. I'm not going to lie. I used to get really frustrated when my plans would change. It would be totally triggering and it would lead to massive breakdowns, but really only in front of my immediate family. So on the outside, I'd be like, oh, it's totally fine. No worries at all. But on the inside, I would get so dysregulated that I would rage at home and I'd snap at my husband and kid and I'd just cry and scream. And it was horrible. And it was a huge problem. But eventually, I got super convicted about that and had to face the fact that the reason for that was that I was putting more hope and faith into my own plan than into whatever plan God had for me was for that day. So now I go into each day with open palms. And if a plan changes, I just cross it out on my planner and I thank God for the unexpected break in my day, which happens less and less frequently as my business has grown. And since I started doing this, I'm constantly surprised by how full my days are of both productivity and rest. I don't feel overwhelmed at the end of my day. And I have more time to practice creative processing. And I'm a more connected and happy person. And my husband and daughter getting home from school and work at the end of the day doesn't make me mad.
So good. That's so good. The top thing I would say, I mean, there's so much here, and I hope everybody just gobbles it all up. But one of the top things I just keep hearing as you have grown and learned and experienced all these things is the growing self-awareness, which also takes some time, right? You've got to have the breathing room for that as well, to recognize those things in yourself for what they are and to say, like, this is really hard. I do need this help, or I do need to surrender, or I am struggling here. Who could help me? And so to take that moment and develop, because obviously that's a thing that we have to develop. I know I did. I didn't know all the things about myself until I sat in it, which I also did not want to do. It was hard and uncomfortable. But I appreciate so much all these things you call out, that you, as you have gained self-awareness in those moments, are able to say, this was hard. Now I do this. This was hard. I tried this. This did not work. So we pivot.
And we all have different stories. And so it's okay if your story doesn't look like mine. What I do know is that if you're in a season of deep processing, so that might be because you're walking through deep and hard grief, or because you're going through therapy, trauma therapy. If you're in seasons where it does just every day just feels overwhelming, or you wake up just being like, God, why? Why am I awake today? I don't understand. Everything feels hard. My body hurts. My brain hurts. My heart hurts. If you're in a season like that, then just start with surrendering your plan for the day. It might be that you are just celebrating taking a shower that day. And that's good enough. You're worthy.
Yes.
It might be that you need a moment or a day to lay in your bed and rest. That doesn't make you lazy. That means that you're healing. You got to be able to create the breathing room and create the space in your life to experience those kinds of things. And that's, I think, what I love, again, just to go back to creative processing, is you can be creative from your bed. When you're going through a season of darkness, or you're going through a deep processing season, like, give yourself more space. Don't book yourself. Don't overbook yourself. And the things, the to-do list, that stuff will come. like you'll get it checked off eventually if it's really important. The Lord will provide. He will equip you to do what you need to do. What you need to do is prioritize him and what he has for you.
See, I needed this from you like, I don't know, 8 years ago when I I've discovered in my self-awareness, I was very, very good at overbooking myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought I was an extrovert. I was like out and going and doing and among people all the time. But I now know it was an attempt to like squash all the yuck. It's not there, or I don't want to deal with it. Let's just not have time to deal with it. Right. And so I do think for me, and I know I've talked with others, it's not everyone, but one easy way to not have to deal with the hard is to go, go, go.
Mm-hmm. To be busy.
Yeah. And I absolutely, I think I would have kept going, which is why I had a lot of the health issues that I did. God took a moment with like, that's cute. That's cute. Why don't you just sit down? Let's sort this out. 2 last questions, and I will let you go. I appreciate so much your time. Obviously, everybody needs to go and listen to the Created Worthy podcast. Just do it. You're welcome. Aside from that one, though, Danielle, is there a book or a podcast that you would like to recommend for our listeners today?
Yeah. I just recently read this book. So ignore this if you are not a business owner specifically in a scaling phase of business. I just have to mention it because it is so good. Like one of the best business books I've ever read.
Awesome.
For business owners. It's called Buy Back Your Time. It is such a good book. I listened to it on Audible. Very, very, very helpful if your business is in a place where you have a team now or you're hiring people.
Love it.
But if you are not in that phase, don't read it yet because it might be overwhelming. But for everyone, general Christian women, one of my very favorite podcasts is by is hosted by a dear friend, Rachel Grohl, and her podcast is called the Hearing Jesus podcast.
Yes.
It's daily devotionals. They're short. A lot of times they're like 10 minutes, 15 minutes. She deep dives into I think right now she's doing a Women in the Word series. So she's deep diving into the women in the Bible and what their lives mean. And she's just so brilliant in her teaching. Mm-hmm. And it's a really easy way to digest the Bible, especially when you're in a really busy season of life or a really full season. I like to call it those seasons full, not busy.
Yeah, I love it.
It again puts more earnest on me, right? It's like fullness is a choice and it's a blessing, whereas busy feels like
so good. I love that distinction. Yes.
So yeah, the Hearing Jesus podcast. And then my daughter is 8 and she loves the Hearing Jesus for Kids podcast as well. So I would just highly recommend listening to those if you are looking to expand your relationship with the Lord and learn more about him in a really easy and approachable way.
I love such a good recommendation. I love Rachel, and she's absolutely on my list of people I'm hoping to have on sooner rather than later because she is just such a wealth of knowledge. I want to do a whole season just where we're talking about getting into the Bible and having time for that and what that looks like. And I know she would be so good. So that's definitely a good one. And we will link that in the show notes along with the book that you mentioned. So last question. Where can people find you and what's coming down the pike? We want to get your resources and all the things. So where can we find you?
Yes. Oh my gosh. So you can find me most often on Instagram, just at Danielle Damrell. I have a business page. Created Worthy has a page. I know I am one of those multi-page Instagrammers, but really I spend the most time on Danielle Damrell. But I am not a slave to social media. So if I am not there for a week, I'm living my life, and that's a good thing.
Awesome.
What is happening right now in my business? Super exciting things. I'm going through a huge rebrand. So we are launching a new website soon. We have restructured all of our offerings for the creative service agency. So if you are a business owner and are scrambling to find good contractors, what I've really aimed to do in my agency is I have an incredible, incredible team of women who are just so amazing. So we've got a copywriter. I do design. We've got social media, content creators, and editors, and just all kinds of creative business services. And so we all have assembled as a team, and then we've got some really incredible partnerships so that you can stop trying to find a good contractor, because that's been a problem for a lot of people. And so,
Yes, it's a mess. It's a mess.
yes, it is a mess. And it's time for people to stop scrambling and for people to start impacting
Yes.
and earning an income. Like, that's an important thing. When you start a business, like, you are stewarding something that God has called you into. And so you should also be able to provide for your family. So that is exciting. Like I briefly mentioned before, we're going to be launching creative processing courses this year. I have a ton of lead magnets that are happening. And then I'm running collaborative book programs for masterminds across the country as well. So I go in and it's called an authorship mentor mind, where I lead the collaborative book process within existing masterminds. So we've got a lot of really awesome things happening, but I would mostly point you to my Instagram right now. My website is damrellcreativeco.com. And then I believe Rachel's going to put a link in the show notes to sign up for my newsletter. And if you do that, then you will be the first one to access all of our amazing freebies and just all different kinds of things that are going to be coming your way soon.
So many good resources. I'm so excited. And yes, everything will be linked in the show notes, the Instagram, the website, all the things. Danielle, thank you so much. It's always so good to see your face and to connect. And I'm just so thankful for your willingness to share and serve in this capacity that God has given you. So thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been such an honor and a blessing.